If you're a Christian, you may well be familiar with the story of Joseph that we find in Genesis chapter 37. You probably already know that God gave Joseph a massive dream, telling him that his own family would bow at his feet. You probably think you understand the story, Joseph's boastful behaviour and his brothers' jealousy and hatred, treating him unfairly and badly, in fact to the point where they wanted to kill him. Can you imagine how provoked someone's heart has to be for them to want to kill you? And that's your brothers, that's your family. It's a story of betrayal and rejection. Joseph was thrown in a hole, beaten by his brothers and thrown into a hole, left for dead. It was only the compassion of one of the brothers that stopped them from killing him. Instead, they sold him into slavery. And Joseph was carried away and ended up a slave in the house of Potiphar. I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that Joseph did steward things well, that he did a good job. But was he rewarded for being faithful to Potiphar and running his house well? No, because Potiphar's wife had a lust problem and she fancied that David was there for other purposes. She wanted to have sex with him. She wanted to have pleasure with him. She wanted to take her own purpose and put it on him. But Joseph had integrity. He wasn't having any of it. He said to her, my master, your husband, has given me control over this whole house and let me be in charge of all of it. Why would I do this great sin against him and against the God that I serve? Well, that enraged her even more, and she grabbed his tunic and Joseph ran off. But in the tussle, Joseph's tunic was left behind, and this set him up to be blamed as she maliciously said, "Oh, Joseph has tried to touch me." Well, Potiphar went mad, like you would if you thought somebody had laid hands on your wife. And Joseph was again betrayed, rejected and thrown into a prison. Now, I don't know about you, but if that was me that had been thrown in a prison, I'd have been banging my hands on the wall saying to God, "This is not fair. Why have you allowed this to happen? You gave me a dream." I think we probably all can relate to that sense of unfairness that we feel when those close to us betray us, or when we try and do our best and the reward seems to be the very opposite of what we believe for our lives and for our hearts. You probably think that the story of Joseph is about unfairness and betrayal. The story of Joseph is a story that's been close to my heart for over 30 years. I could relate to it, and in many ways, some of my journey had mirrored some of his, and I'm sure that's true for many of you out there. Betrayal, rejection, being treated unfairly, people not really seeing what's in your heart and treating you badly. It doesn't make sense sometimes. But you know, recently the Holy Spirit showed me something and it completely transformed my understanding of this story. I'm going to tell you a shocking fact. It does not say in the Bible that rejection tested the heart of Joseph. It does not say in the Bible that betrayal tested the heart of Joseph. It does not say in the Bible that imprisonment tested the heart of Joseph. Shockingly, it says the word of the Lord tested the heart of Joseph. What? The word of the Lord tested Joseph's heart? That was the thing that really cut him to the middle. You see, God knows if he's given you a great promise, you probably need a great process to get you ready to become the person that you're called to be. You know, at the beginning, Joseph may have had the ability to be a steward, but he didn't have a humble heart. And God values humility to the point where he decides to reveal himself. Jesus said, "Come to me, all that are tired and weary, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you," and that means learn from me. "For I am gentle and humble in my heart, and you will find rest to your souls." We serve a humble God. God hates pride. The story of Joseph is about preparation, and God gave the exact promise that he knew would produce the fruit in Joseph's life in the end. We see by the time that Joseph's brothers bowed at his feet, Joseph went, took himself out of their sight, and wept like a baby. By then, his heart was full of mercy, compassion, and love. He was just overjoyed to see his brothers, and wanted nothing more than to forgive them and release them for what they had done that was wrong. And instead of blaming them, he said these incredible words: "What you planned for my harm, God has planned for my good and for the salvation of many." You see, Joseph had really understood that the journey had prepared him for God's greater purpose. You see, when God allowed him to go through those circumstances that seemed unfair, it was only bring him in to his destiny to be a vessel of blessing to other people. In fact, Joseph's position allowed an entire nation to be saved, and God's supernatural revelation and wisdom through the Pharaoh's dream, which Joseph interpreted, which opened the door of favour for him, that opened up practical provision, protection from starvation to millions of people. If God gives you a great promise, you will go through a great process. This is the lessons from the life of Joseph, that in the end, it's the humble heart that will sit upon the throne. And we know this to be true when we look at the cross. Ultimately, Jesus displays the humility of God in taking our sin. And even though he had the right to come and force us to bow at his feet, for he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, he hung on the cross, he took your blame and shame. And one of the last things he ever said was, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." These are the lessons from the life of Joseph.